I work at the American Embassy. As you can tell, I'm not an American from my Welsh accent. I wear two hats at the Embassy. I am the International Trade Specialist for the technology sector. So my day job involves helping American technology companies come to the UK. But one day a week, on every Monday, I'm actually the Embassy's liaison officer with the Welsh Government on trade and investment matters, and I work with people like Mike and Ida here from the Assembly on various US-related trade and investment matters. So I've been asked to talk about trading with the USA. We deal with a lot of US companies that come to the UK, and actually the experience of selling into the UK on behalf of US companies is very similar in the process of selling from the UK into the US. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of statistics on my presentation, just the one slide, but I guess I wouldn't want to insult your intelligence by pointing out that you all know that the US is the largest economy in the world. It has the highest per capita income in the world. It shares many characteristics of the UK in terms of language and business culture and regulatory environment and the openness of doing business. And for all those reasons, you know, the special relationship between the US and the UK is very strong, particularly in trade and investment, and some of these figures speak to that. So, I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not going to bore you with the statistics and all of that. I think you know about the scale of the relationship. You know, the UK and the US share the biggest international investment relationship. The UK is the biggest investor in the US, and the US is the biggest investor in the UK. About 1 million people work in the UK for US companies and vice versa. So it's a very, very strong relationship, which means that there is a fantastic market for you in the US if you're prepared to put the time and effort into addressing it. What I'm going to do today, there'll be other speakers here who will talk from an industry perspective of how they've gone and done it. And one of the first things I say to all my companies when they try to come to the UK, for example, is go and find companies in your market that have been there and done it already, because that's the best advice you can possibly get. We've also got a speaker from UKTI who's going to talk about the support that UK government provides, and they have a network of offices in the US, and so I'm not going to steal their thunder and talk about that. So what I'm actually going to talk about is what we know is that companies that succeed in doing business in the US do so because they have thoroughly researched the market and they understand the process. And businesses that fail to do business in the US haven't. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is if you are considering doing business in the US, where can you turn from our perspective for advice and support and guidance? And there's a lot of it out there. It's a bit confusing actually for companies because there's a plethora of advice and support, and where do you start and what's most relevant to you and most practical. So I'm just going to talk through some of these issues about where I think it would be useful for you to take a look in terms of getting advice and support before you actually start engaging and spending time, effort and money in doing business in the US. So I'm going to cover off some of these issues. The first of which is I'm going to make a reference as I go through these slides to a website called Select USA. And Select USA is a resource that's been created by the US government to help international companies get to grips with how to do business in the US. And the reason selfishly that we do that is that we're hoping that more and more international companies will, having used this advice and guidance, will actually look seriously at doing business in the US and ultimately maybe invest in the US, putting direct operations there. So one of the first places I would start is to say, okay, depending on the industry I'm in, how can I get a quick feel for what's going on in that industry in the US? What is the size of it? What are some of the major opportunities? What are some of the major initiatives going on around funding for that industry, for example? And one of the parts of the Select USA website that's good to take a look at is this site. And by the way, anybody who needs a copy of this presentation to get the links, just let me know later on. I'll be able to send it across to you. But on the Select USA website, depending on what industry you're in, you'll be able to go to a snapshot report of that particular industry. And as you can see, there are 20 or so key industry sectors there. And it's a great place to start to find out what's going on in your industry, in your market, but in the US, to start thinking about what the opportunities may be for you to trade into the American market. So the next thing that I think it's worth taking a look at, and this is a question I get asked a lot by UK companies who are thinking about doing business in the US. The US is a huge geographical entity, a massive market, obviously, 300 million people, the biggest economy in the world. How on earth, where do I start? What part of America should I be going to? You know, depending on the business I'm in. Where are the customers in America for my products? And one of the ways that I think it's good to take a look at that and get some useful information is to actually go to a resource that has been created actually as a partnership between the US government and Harvard University. Some very clever people have been working on a project for some years now which maps out where all of the industry clusters around the US are based. So irrespective of what industry you're in, you can go to a tool that these guys have produced. And actually, it's an interactive map. I've produced a screenshot of the spreadsheet there, but actually I did that because the interactive map, which is very useful and very powerful, you can drill down geographically to where all the clusters are in the US, had been taken down for maintenance the day I was doing this, so I couldn't actually put it up there. But if you actually go to the bottom of those two web links, it'll take you to that interactive map, and you can drill down all around the US to find out where companies like yours are doing business successfully in the US, because you know the logic is that if those guys are doing successful business in those parts of America, in those industries, then those are probably the best parts of America for you to go to in your industry. And it gives a hell of a lot of detail about who the clusters are, who some of the biggest players in those clusters are, what support is available for industry-specific initiatives in those clusters. So I very much recommend you go to that cluster mapping tool and take a look at that. The next thing I would suggest that you take a look at is the range of free and very detailed practical business guides that have been published on doing business in America. And if you actually go to the Select USA website, they're all available there free to download. And it's a sort of advice that typically a business would pay thousands and thousands of dollars for obtaining from a consultant, but it's actually in written form in a number of guides. And so every different aspect of doing business at a very practical and very detailed level is available from some of these professionally published guides, which through our relationship as the US government, we've been able to obtain and able to offer out to foreign companies who are interested in doing business in the US free of charge. They're all downloadable from the Select USA website, or there's a link through to the particular company's website that allows you to download it for free. And I won't go, I mean, you can see from there the various aspects of doing business in the US that they cover. I won't go through them in detail. I did just want to point one out, though, which is the one that's highlighted there. That's actually been produced by a New York law firm, and I've taken a look at that, and it's written by a lawyer in that firm, and it's a very, very hands-on practical guide based on decades of that company's experience of helping foreign companies come into the US and do business successfully. It's a very good guide. These are the chapter headings. If you take a look at them, I would suggest that if you're a UK business that's trying to get to grips with how I do business successfully in the US, these are all the subject matters that you need to get your heads around. And there's some very good practical advice based on helping hundreds of UK and other international companies coming to the US. And I've just highlighted there the last chapter, because I've read that chapter and it really kind of resonates with me, because I deal with a lot of, I deal with hundreds of companies here looking to do business in the UK, from the US and vice versa. And what you find is the companies that are successful keep doing the same handful of right things, and the companies who fail keep making the same mistakes. And so there's a chapter in that guide that goes through some of the common errors that foreign companies make when they try to come into the US by not adopting the right processes, or maybe not getting the right advice, or not doing enough due diligence on the partners that they are hoping to do business with. Because very often the way that a company starts to do business in the US is they go to the US and they might meet somebody at a trade show, or they might be introduced to somebody at some kind of a networking event, or maybe a chamber event, which is great. But entering a new foreign market, while fantastic for your potential business growth, can be a scary thing to do. And you can waste a lot of time, effort, and money if you don't actually follow the proper procedures. And so some of these guys, including this one, lay all that out. And why wouldn't you learn from the experience of others to avoid repeating their mistakes? So this guide in particular, but all of the guides actually, I would recommend you take a look at. I'm going to talk more specifically now briefly about some of the support, financial support you can actually get from the US government if you are interested in attending international trade shows in the US. Now I should point out that even though this support is available from the US government, it's not funded by the US government, it's not funded by US taxpayers, it's support that is available to foreign companies through arrangements we have with very large international trade show organizers and travel and hotel companies that we work with to get large groups of foreign companies out to the US. Again, I won't read through each of the points you can see there. One of the things that we do over here in the UK, for example, I mean, I mentioned that my day job is helping technology companies engage in the market. I take a group of UK companies each year, every January, to Las Vegas, to the largest consumer electronics trade show in the world, which is International CES. It's a huge show, something like 150,000 trade visitors, companies exhibiting from all over the world, not just the US, about 3,500 exhibiting companies. It's a beast of a show. It's the biggest trade show that actually takes place in Las Vegas every year. If you're in the consumer electronics industry and you have aspirations to sell into that market internationally, it's a must-attend show. Over 5 days, you will meet anybody that you would wish to meet to actually think about partnering with companies to do business either in the US or in other countries. So what we do is we take UK companies out to that show, and we subsidise the cost of them getting there. So through a travel partner that we work with in the UK, we offer discounted flights and accommodation. But the travel show organisers themselves, in this case the American Consumer Electronics Association, provides us with funding to subsidise groups of companies coming to the show. And the way that we do that is we get that money from them, they give it to us, and then we allocate it out to the companies. So I typically take about 100 companies out to Las Vegas every year for this show, and apart from the discounted travel and accommodation, we get about an extra 10% of funding from the trade show to, again, reduce the cost of getting there, because obviously that's one of the biggest costs of attending a trade show, is actually getting there and staying there. But we also produce a whole bunch of other things. We offer to do matchmaking meetings with US exhibitors at the shows. Again, technology is my show, but we cover every sector, every major trade show in the US. We offer facilities to attend networking receptions. We even offer, in some cases, for UK companies to share stand space with potential US partners. So if you're in a particular niche of the market and you come to us in advance and say, we'd love to come to the show, but we can't really afford to take space ourselves, we can find a US company that might be prepared to share costs on a booth. So we do a bunch of things for trade shows to get people out there. It's the best way in a short space of time to meet potential partners and clients. But obviously there's a cost involved in it, so as far as we're concerned, we try to reduce that cost. If you want to find out more about the shows that we actually support with that program, it's actually called the International Buyer Program, because originally it was funded by an initiative of the US government to get more international buyers to go to trade shows. It's still called the International Buyer Program, but you don't need to be a buyer to go on it. You can be a company wanting to go out and sell, buy, whatever. If you are a foreign company that wants to go to a US trade show, you can take advantage of the International Buyer Program. And to find out which shows we support, If you go to that very long website link, which again I can give anybody a copy of this presentation if they want it, it'll bring you to this schedule. Now that's the schedule for 2012, and within that schedule it will list all of the trade shows that we support through this program. The schedule does change from time to time. There will be a new schedule coming out for 2013 shortly, but 90% of the shows we support every year because they are the major shows for those particular industries. Okay, so the next level of support that we find is of great interest to companies when they're thinking about doing business out in the US is, are there any incentives, any grants available for us to actually come and do business in the US, and particularly to set up business operations over there? Well, there are in the US. The US is, in a way, is slightly different to the UK in the sense that there are federal grants and incentives available, so at central government level. There are very specific state-based incentives available, and even below state, you know, city and regional incentives available. But again, there's a morass of information out there. You know, there are like, I don't know how many grant incentive schemes there are, but there are literally hundreds of them. And it's difficult if you're an individual business to work out which are relevant to me. So Select USA have actually created again an interactive website where, from a state-based point of view, you can actually click on this map. That will take you through to the individual state incentive schemes, and then depending on the type of business you are, you can say, okay, I'm in, let's say, for example, pharmaceuticals, what incentives are available to me? Or I'm in automotive manufacturing, what incentives are available to me? And it'll list all of the details of the incentives and also where you need to go to talk to people to actually engage in the process to lay your hands on the financial assistance. So that's, again, I would suggest you take a good look at that. There's a similar arrangement for finding out about federal, in other words, central government level incentives. It's not an interactive map, but if you go to this link, you can see down the left-hand side there, it lists types of grants and incentives, industry sectors, and you can just click which ones are relevant to you, and then that will take you through to a long list of the incentives and grants that are out there for the industries that you work in, and that will allow you to drill down and know that, for example, if you happen to be in the energy industry and you're working on, I don't know, solar panels, is there a grant for my specific grant for my business to get going in the US in that field? And there are, you know, again, like I say, a plethora of grants and incentives available. This just allows you to navigate down to the ones that are relevant to you. I mentioned that grants and incentives in the US are available at federal level, at state level, and city level. Getting to grips with all that can be a bit of a minefield. This website, which is not, by the way, a US government website, this is a commercial website, is, I think, the best of them out there to take a look at, to find out who's doing what, where, at a federal, a city and a county level. It just lists all of the contacts in each of the areas of the US that you can go and talk to about getting economic development support if you are a potential investor in the US. And then finally, I've been asked to come and talk here by the Chamber of Commerce, and as you probably know, the whole concept of the Chambers of Commerce was invented in the US and been going over there now for over 100 years. Believe it or not, there are 6,000 chambers in the US, about 120 per state. It's a massive network and a hugely productive network, particularly for small businesses that are trying to get traction in the US. You know, we are talking with Graham Morgan at the Chamber and others about making some partnering arrangements between the Southwell Chamber and some of the chambers out in the US that we think are of particular relevance to Welsh companies. But again, this is the US Chamber's website. There's an interactive map to find out where the chambers are in a particular area and linking you through to the companies that are members of those chambers. So I would, if you were thinking of going to the US, whenever you go to the US, for whatever reason, contact the local chamber and let them know you're going out there. They're very, very user-friendly in terms of setting up meetings for companies that are visiting the US, because they see potential reciprocal trading opportunities between their local companies and companies that are coming into the market. And then finally, a lot of companies, when they first start thinking about going to the US to do business, don't actually want to set up a direct sales operation there because they haven't worked out whether there's a market for them yet or not. So they come to us quite often asking for advice on how they can find distributors, sales agents, maybe wholesalers that can help them get into the market without actually the cost and time and effort and expense of directly investing in the market, while they're still trying to work out, exactly what the size of the opportunity for them is in the US. I would very much recommend you take a look at this resource. Again, this is not a US government resource. This is a commercial website, but it's one of the best out there in trying to identify distributors and agents and so on that could potentially help work with you and partner with you in the US. I think at last count there was something like 650 companies listed on this site who can act as a distributor or an agent or a wholesaler for you in the US. And of course, they all tend to specialize in particular industries. But again, you can find them on this resource. So that's kind of a very quick overview on some of the sources of advice, guidance, and support that is available for doing business in the US if you're a UK company. I mentioned that I have a remit to help the Welsh Government here. I'm available through Mike and his team for anybody that wants to talk about coming to the US. And I think later today, Mike will actually be talking about the fact that we're working with the Welsh Government to help them plan a couple of trade missions over to the US that are coming up. Firstly to the East Coast in September, and then subsequently to the West Coast in the new year. And I would very much recommend that if you're serious about wanting to do business in the US, you consider joining those missions, because there is no better way to get a feel for how to do business in the US and to meet potentially interesting partners in the US than to actually get out there and engage in the market. And being a member of a mission is a great way to do that. Okay, thanks very much.
Afternoon now. I'm Bridgen, Laminating Technology. We're machinery builders. We export 95% of turnover, and we're full with our order book to July next year. So that proves exporting's a good thing. This picture always gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling. 2 machines in Gardena in California. One put in 3 years ago, the blue one, the grey one put in earlier this year, £250,000 each machine. Yeah, gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling. So, a couple of omissions. We are a niche market. We're machinery builders for the aerospace, and we do export all over the world, and we are very proactive on marketing but reactive on sales. So some of the points I'm going to make might not wash over. I happen to think most of them do. So right, first point, why are you going to sell to America? Well, if you're thinking that your other half has been chasing you to take her shopping in New York, or your family want you to take them to Disney World, Disneyland, forget it. 34 years I've been going to the States. I managed to take one of my ex-wives, notice the plural there, to the States twice, and I've taken the family once. Otherwise, and that was strapped onto a business trip. Could explain the ex. It's not a holiday. If you're going to go to America, be serious about it. If you're not serious, don't even bother. It's a big market. My numbers are probably a bit out of date. I just took them off of Google. 211 million people that they know about. There's an awful lot more they don't know about. 15 trillion GDP, and it's growing. But then don't forget that Europe is 17.5 trillion US dollars. UK 2.4. Brazil, that's a good country. That's 2.4, and that's growing like fury. So make sure you're going to America for the right reason. And also don't forget the size. Right, you're in New York and your next customer's in LA, that's a 6-hour flight. It's a long, long way, and you've really got to start thinking, where am I going to start in the USA? How am I going to cover the size of the country? Do you understand the costs involved? It's expensive. These days, flights are going more and more expensive. Flights around the USA can be expensive. So it's not the cheap country it used to be. And the way the currencies fluctuate, you've got to be a bit careful. Can you handle be here tomorrow? Americans expect you to react. I've got an American customer, he's actually in Shanghai, but he's an American operation, rang me on Wednesday night, Rob, want you in Shanghai? I jumped on a plane Thursday, I got there Friday afternoon, I worked through the night, I was on the Saturday plane home because I had another trip planned. If you're not prepared to get out there and do it, again, don't bother. Again, remember Seattle, we do a lot of work in Seattle. LA is another good market for us, they're 8 hours behind us. So how are you going to overlap on your times? And can you handle 3 a.m. phone calls? And that's not from Americans this way, it's also your customers in England calling you when it's the middle of the night out there. And if you're not prepared, again, to take 3 a.m. phone calls and sound intelligent when you're doing it, it's another hurdle. Can you handle the demand? We've just caught a cold, we've just sold a whole lot of machines and we're late on delivery. Hopefully the machines are that good that we're going to get forgiven when they get out there. But, you know, you're going to go out there, maybe you're doing £250,000 a year turnover in the UK and your first order's for $2 million. Can you handle it? Are you thinking you can handle it? Have you got finance in place? And a lot of speakers are talking about finance. I'm going to get rocks thrown at me. You're on your own with finance. There are people helping you there, but you really are on your own when you're looking at the marketplace that you're trying to go into. Can you handle a £250,000 order on 90-day terms? Now, we're machinery builders, so we ask for deposit with order, mid-build, prior to shipping. The 2 machines that I showed you first time round, that customer has just sent out a letter to all his suppliers. He's moved from prior to shipping to 60 days. And that's on the docks in the USA. So at 60 days, I've got to wait for the money, but it's also the 30 days shipping time to Los Angeles, plus docks at either end. You know, you could have money tied up there for 140 days quite easily. Are you ready to handle that? Because Americans like open account trading. Letters of credit, forget it. It's open account, have you got it covered on the risk? Can you handle that sort of finance? And what strengths do you have to get better payment terms? We fight fairly hard. As I say, we're a niche market, so we're able to impose better payment terms. But again, you might want to be thinking when you price the job, do you need to offer discounts to get paid quicker? Who's your competition out there? And why are you better? I don't say cheaper, why are you better? And how do you know you're better? What feedback are you getting to tell you that it's good to export out there? And how do you know what the competitors are saying about you? You're in England, they're over there. Are they running you down, saying, oh, the English can't deliver on time or whatever? You need to be aware of what's going on. And how to start? Well, trade missions. I've been on a couple of really, really good ones. The only downside on trade missions, they too tend to go into a city and cover that area. It's a big country, so is a trade mission really good for you? Trade shows, definitely. We do trade shows in America. They are affordable. £7,000 will get you a 10-foot by 10-foot booth with your stand, with your leaflets, with your transport, with your hotels, with everything. And the footfall in a US trade show is very, very good. Can be a little bit regional. We went to do one in Seattle, so we picked up all the West Coast customers. Didn't get many East Coast people over there. Chicago's quite good because it's a bit more central. Website. If you're not on the first 3 pages, when somebody Googles what you're looking for, you're dead. People won't go past page 3. We're lucky we hit number 1 on page 1. But you really need to make sure that whoever's doing your web design is totally on the ball, so you've got good presentation. Agents, mixed views. Depends what you're selling. Depends who you meet as an agent. We don't use agents in the USA. I use them in Russia and China and Singapore and France and places like that. I don't use them very much in the USA because I find that they want to charge too much, and a lot of them have a big portfolio of clients, and are they going to give you the attention that they need? Licensees, I made a lot of money in America for a while because I built my machines over in America using a licensee. Really good. Americans loved it because it was US built machine, although it was my design. Yeah, I took 10% commission on every machine that went out. The first order was for $1 million. And this is back in the early 80s when $1 million was $1 million. Only disadvantage was when the owner of the company sold up, the new owners wouldn't honour the licensee agreement. They said it was the old company, old management. Well, that's a problem. Co-suppliers. If you're selling, I mean, our machines process raw materials. So the raw material suppliers are very good at helping us sell machines because they know if our machine goes into a customer and works, that their materials are going to get processed to the right standard, and so they're out there promoting us over other machinery suppliers. So working with co-suppliers is good. And then there is good support for you to help start up. Fraser International, clockwork ferrets I call them, wind them up, point them in the direction of what the information you need, they'll come back with the results. So there is some help out there. How did we start? Well, I went there again and again and again. Jumped on a plane, went there. Now luckily, because I was working with co-suppliers, all my leads were hot. I will not cold call at all. But if you've got good contacts out there, then going out there and face-to-face meetings is the way to do it. I did lots of road shows, put a machine in the back of a rider truck, hauled it around the States. We stopped at holiday inns, we stopped at conference centres, and the 4 of us, that's 3 suppliers and me with the machinery, did road shows, and it was really, really good because you could get all the local people in, show them the machine working, show them the process working, and that worked for us very well. Trade shows, as I said, I love trade shows, really good way of getting in there. I did go on the Washington 80 mission where 80 companies, I think it was, went out there, and that was really good because I met some. Although it was limited to Washington, there were an awful lot of high flyers came in from Boeing and other people where they were face-to-face meetings and you got a lot of information. Did the licensee, and what I do is whenever I go, I have a list of customers who want me there, and I have a list of potential customers that are warm calls, so it's affordable. And have we made money in the USA? Yes, we have. Right, so a few problems. Right, language, a common barrier. We're 2 countries separated by 1 language. I did a presentation. When I did presentations, quite often I scribble a lot on a whiteboard. So I filled up the whiteboard and I said to somebody, anybody got a rubber? Well, I should have asked for an eraser because a rubber in America is a condom. So who's looking a fool? Also, you might go into a factory. I did recently in Indiana, right in the middle of the States, Indiana, lovely factory. Did a training course, everybody looking at me blankly. Why? Because they're all Mexican labour and nobody spoke a word of English. So we had to go and get some translation. So be ready for that. The sense of humour is different. Don't be flippant. Classic case, small town airport, picked up a rental car. Well, you're English. Can you handle automatic? Can you handle driving on the other side of the road? So I just said, as you do. Well, listen out. When you hear the banging and crashing stopped, you know I got the hang of it. Wrong thing to say. Really don't understand it. You meet lots of different cultures. As I say, down in California, a lot of Mexican labour. And you've got to be aware of that. It's no good just rattling on. You've got to work out who you're talking to. US markets, they expect it now. So you've got to really be on the ball, getting your information out there, your quotations out there, your documentation out there, but be aware that the information back from the USA can be slow. They're chased like hell to get you to send them stuff. When you ask them questions, you can sometimes wait a bit. And things are different. US specifications, I mean, voltage is a good one. In England, what are we talking? 380, 400 volts for machinery. Standard almost worldwide. America, 220 volt or 480 volt. And if you try plugging 480 volts into a 400 volt machine, it gets exciting. Wiring colours, they're different, and they can be different from state to state. So you might build your product to a international standard, you get over to the US, and they will turn around and tell you to rewire the machine using wire of the local colour. They'll also use local inspection houses. Boeing do this. We have to have a US inspection house check every machine we supply to Boeing. Luckily now, we've got it to the point where they trust us, so instead of the guys from the inspection house coming to England to check us, we get them to check it on site. Because an inspection house coming to visit you, you're talking £10,000 flat rate. Local laws. And health and safety. Again, standard machine used in Seattle by Boeing. We put one into Charleston in South Carolina. Oh no, we want this a bit different. We want that a bit different. So be prepared for local people to give you local demands. And working hours. We've got a lot of customers start at 6 o'clock in the morning and work through to maybe 2 or 3. So it's no good turning up at standard UK time at 7 or 8 in the morning. You're late. So what we do, we get there 6 o'clock in the morning and we work to 6 o'clock at night. They've all gone home. They see the Brits still working, so it's quite good. But if you stroll in at 9 o'clock, you're dead meat. Right, getting paid. Well, letters of credit aren't really liked over there. It's open account trading. So you've got to make sure that you can trust the people you're doing business with. Are you going to get paid? And currencies, I've traded, I say, 34 years. I've had the dollar at $2 to the pound, and I've had it at 1.1 to the pound. And the previous speaker said about currency fluctuations. We did a job, we lost £20,000 on currency fluctuations, and that was in the time that Boeing paid us, the Boeing Aircraft Company paid us with a dollar cheque, which the British banks took 6 weeks to clear, and we lost £20,000 in that 6 weeks. So now we will only quote in pounds sterling. Sometimes people don't like it. We just simply say, in this day and age of currency fluctuations, we are quoting in pounds sterling. What we'll sometimes soften it a bit and say, well, we'll convert the invoices to dollars closer to time of shipment when we know we're going to get paid. But you've got to be careful. And if you do get a check from the Boeing Aircraft Company, it will take a UK bank 6 weeks to clear. So, and you won't get onto electronic banking until you've had at least 2 checks, paper checks from Boeing. And then they'll put you onto their electronic payment. Life gets easier. And when is payment made? We try, wherever possible, to have 90% of our money before the machine leaves the country. But one good customer in America will only pay me when it's on the docks in LA. So you've got to know when you're going to get paid, and are you going to get paid when it arrives, when it's working? With machines, quite often the customer wants to see it working. Maybe never. Once you've put your goods in a container and it sails away from the UK, you've more or less lost control of the situation. You can do certain things to protect yourself, but be aware of that. You've really got to know when you're going to get paid. Luckily, with the US, we haven't had a non-payment. It's just been problems on currency. Travel. If you're going to go there, go economy. You can't afford, if you're just starting exporting, you can't afford to go business because it's too expensive. Do what we do. Use somebody like Dala Flight, who gives us the best possible economy flight, and then we pay that extra £50 or £75 for an emergency exit seat. A lot of airlines do it. KLM do it. I know they've got a stand here. Delta do it. BA do it. Virgin do it. And that's a real good way of travelling. You've got plenty of leg room, and you're not paying too much. Find a hotel with a frequent traveller programme. We use choice hotels, which have got a whole range of hotels throughout the States, well, worldwide. Every third trip, I get 3 nights. Makes a big difference when you're out there for a while. Food. American food's fine, but you only need to eat 2 meals a day. If you eat 3 meals a day, you're going to come back 20 pounds heavier, believe me. Medical insurance. I got bitten by a rabid dog. Don't ask how, but anyway. And I had the serum in my briefcase, and I wanted it put into my arm. Everywhere else, the doctor just did it, and it went. In America, it was, well, yeah, we can do that. That'll be $100. Oh, by the way, we better give you a medical checkup before we actually give you the injection. That'll be $400. Okay? Now, you've all got your insurance, I'm sure. Read the small print. When I got bitten by the rabid dog, I had a screwdriver in my hand, and that was classed as manual work. A lot of travel insurance does not cover you if you're doing manual work. And they didn't pay out on the rabid dog incident, so that was a bit of a shock. Mobile phone costs. I've blown £500 in a week on a UK phone when I'm been really, really busy, maybe had a technical problem, calling my supplier to find out why something isn't working. So what I do now is I went to Radio Shack, I bought a $20 phone, cost me $70 every time I go to America, unlimited international calling. And all that happens is when I come back, the phone goes dormant. When I go back to the States, back into supermarket or into T-Mobile, top it up, another $70, unlimited calling. Email security. Yeah, you can go to the hotel, Wi-Fi, all the rest. You want to look at some of the security warnings. I run 3 emails. And anybody wants to hack into the one I use when I travel around the world, that's fine by me. Anything secure, I just have to be very, very careful. And things not to do, well, the obvious ones, dodgy bars, I guess, and things like that. You know, that, and also be careful when you're driving. I got let off by the highway patrol for driving like an Englishman on my last trip. My colleague, who had left his wallet with his driving license in the hotel, was told by the sheriff, I've got three choices. I can give you a $400 fine which you pay now, I can put you into jail until you find your paperwork, or I can give you a very strict warning. We got the warning, thank goodness, but he was quite keen on putting my colleague into jail. So really, to finish off, it's a very important market. They know what they want, and you better get it right. If you're right, and you're on time, you're fine. If you're wrong, fix it. Remember, 80% of customers will come back to you, even if you've made a mess of things, providing you put it right and prove it to them that you've got it right. We've now got 2 years hard work ahead of us because we're late on the last two machines. Luckily, one of the customers has said to me, they're recommending us, they're doing joint advertising with us, they're recommending us because he said, you're late on the machines, but when the machine does arrive, it works straight out the box. If we've got a problem, you are straight here providing support and assistance, and the machine does what it says on the tin. So they will continue to buy from us and they'll continue to recommend us, but we've got to get better. It's a lesson that we've learned. So you've got to be right, you've got to be on time, and if you have got it wrong, fix it. And that's really where we're coming from.
So what is UK trade and investment? Can I have a quick show of hands? How many of you are actually familiar with who and what we are? Oh, that's pretty good then, that's pretty good. But basically, we are the International Business Development Agency, government department, if you like, that supports UK companies of all shapes and sizes, but we have a particular remit with UK SMEs, do business, establish business, and begin exporting overseas, and also attracting high-value investment to the United Kingdom. Now, we've been through some trade stats already, so I won't sort of go through those again. But what we have seen is the market in the United States is vast. It really is a huge trade and investment bilateral relationship. The trade in goods and services just last year was heading towards £119 billion sterling, and it is actually something that is growing. Now this map here is a bit of a timepiece actually. Just to reiterate, sorry about this, the United States is vast, is something which we've also heard. It's a very lucrative market for those who can crack it, and it's also a very competitive market, and it can be very difficult. Now this slide was actually created by The Economist, and it's just from 2009, but you can probably see, if you can, how out of date this now is, given the fact we've got the likes of Italy and Greece there. What it represents are the comparative GDP wealth of independent states. It's a landmass pretty equivalent to that of Saudi Arabia. It has an economy itself bigger than that of Germany, worth around $3.3 trillion, which is about 5% of GDP. So you can really get a sense of how vast the opportunities are there, but also how spread out they are. Now, given the size of the relationship and how big the market is, the USA network that we have reflects that. We've got about 125 people, trade and investment teams made up of both policy experts, economic experts, and importantly to you, sector experts and trade support facilitators. We're based at the British Embassy in Washington, DC, and 8 other British consulates throughout the United States. And as I say, we do work very closely with the likes of the Welsh Government and, of course, with the US Commercial Service on a daily basis. And we share our teams. We have a shared presence in a number of these offices there. And we also means that we are able to link in with the US Chambers, formerly mentioned, and, of course, business groups such as British American Business, who is the largest transatlantic business group that have a presence here in the United Kingdom. And this is actually where we are located. So as I say, it's our largest overseas network. And here we just have an indication of some of the key sectors that we focus on. I mentioned that everything is pretty much covered. Now, not only are we looking at supporting you here in the UK before you go out and have sort of obligations about setting foot into the market, but you get a very good idea here that, as we did before with Andy's presentation, the sheer variety of areas that we're looking at. Now, although the offices are quite well spaced apart, we have virtual teams, and invariably, if you're looking at a cross-US model or cross-US information on what's happening in a particular sector or how we can support you, that's pretty much how we operate. The creative and media industries on the West Coast there, energy now, which is really expanding. Traditionally, we had a very strong oil and gas hub in Houston. We still have, but the low carbon sector is massive, and that encompasses everything from, bizarrely, the likes of creative industries through to manufacturing and other sectors as well. Life sciences there mentioned for Boston, and of course healthcare. The clean tech actually is focused up on the top left there, but really anything goes. Excuse me. So what you need to do, this is where we can really assist you. As mentioned, we always recommend that you speak with a locally placed advisor here to do some sort of a diagnostic. What is it you actually want to get out of your exports, your joint ventures, or your business activities? When you've had that discussion, you can then link in with ourselves. That can be done for you. You are free to contact us directly. But what you really need to know, as Rob was mentioning, think about that market entry. What is it you really want to achieve? It is very competitive. Are your resources in place? Have you got that business plan together? You may have those, but again, through discussions with us, we can go through those and think, how can we perhaps refine it if needs be? How can we take that forward? The likes of trade show presence, the likes of market reports, market intelligence, getting a bigger feel about what you need to be doing, or if you have got a very clear idea, facilitating warmed up contacts and leads for you, getting those meetings in place. To what extent are you planning on travelling to the United States? It can be prohibitively expensive, but how can we target those visits to maximise the effect for you? Market entry, of course, was mentioned, getting those contacts in place, warmed up leads. Importantly, getting what you have already together is important. A US telephone number, or one that looks like a US telephone number that can be seen on the website, that's what American business is going to be receptive to. Get a website really up to scratch, really up to speed. Get your presentation skills in order. Really think about how you're going to be marketing the product as well. Now, these are quite big themes. They can be quite daunting, but again, there is a system in place where we can help you with that. The market structure, it is different from the United Kingdom, again, for some of the themes that we've seen earlier today. The vast geography there, but how that can be focused in. The resources, and then, of course, the practicalities of getting those goods out there, importing, and getting those meetings together also. How do you find the right business partners? What do you really need to do? Arguably, I don't know if Rob would have a comment about this, but to Americanize your business, getting that recognition out there. They like the UK, they like the fact we're innovative, we've got those cultural ties, but also you've got to have a very, very strong offer for what you're offering there. Otherwise, they'll just say, I'll go elsewhere. So get all of that in place. Do your homework also. Doing the homework is always the key issue. Now, you're all very busy people. Some of us like homework, not all of us do, but it's something, again, that we can help with. Make use of UKTI's highly subsidised services to help with this. Now, I'm not here on a hard sell, but basically what we do have on the services are a variety of options for you, one of which is our OMIS, which is the Overseas Market Information Service, which I'll come on to a little bit more detail in just a moment. But away from that, as a government agency, we don't always have the ability to advise specifically on tax or legal aspects. But again, as we've seen from the information available through the Select USA, that information is out there. We do also have some, and then we can also steer you towards experts in market and also specialist UK-friendly advice, UK-friendly company advice, let's skip that. Advisors here that basically specialise in assisting UK or European companies that are looking to do business in the United States. Invariably, tax specialists, state specialists, and importantly, legal specialists. That's something I should have mentioned before. Before you even consider this, make sure you've got a good lawyer on board. So we mentioned about the pricing issues there and you know, raising your profile by network and exhibiting in the right place. Much of that network can also be done here in the United Kingdom. I mean, through a variety of events and seminars that are taking place. Say we work closely with our partners, and we often have our experts visiting the UK who you can speak with face-to-face about specific opportunities. So this is really where it can come into play as to how we can help you. So back to the publications I mentioned. These supplement very well the Select USA and the other publications that were highlighted by Andy earlier today. In fact, the publication on the right, Establishing a Business Presence in the USA, is a condensed version of that written by Mr. Aaron Wise, the very respected New York lawyer. These are available online on our website, www.ukti.gov.uk, and they really are worth having a look through. They're not heavy reading, but they've all got those real key themes that you really need to address. Preparing for a successful US trade show, product liability. The legal issues are quite serious. Establishing the business presence. We've got another one, as I mentioned, called Marketing in the USA. And then also a guide to the services that we offer. So that gives a little bit more detail about how you can access the OMIS programs and what they really represent. Okay, so that's me. Just very briefly, I will mention something that did make me laugh. The publication that we have, which is Marketing in the USA, is written by a person called Alison Stewart Allen. She's invariably known as Sky's Muse of Marketing. She's a Californian that lives in London, and she's actually written the book on working with Americans called Working with Americans. It's quite light-hearted, but I'd certainly recommend it to you. And we spoke about the language differences earlier. Rob unfortunately fell foul of one. Certainly another one that you should never say is teach your grandmother to suck eggs. But there was one here, or a couple here, which Alison referred through. And they were interpretations, Texas translations of some expressions in California. And I won't dwell on these, it's pretty much the end of the show now, we've got other people coming in. But basically for California, you'd say a diverse or lifestyle choice. In Texas, that would be sinful and perverted. In California, an undocumented worker. In Texas, an illegal alien. California, heavily armed. In Texas, well protected, and in California, narrow-minded, and in Texas, that would be righteous. So the point is that different parts of the United States are very different, both socially, culturally, and doing business in them is very, very different. Having said that, it's a fantastic place to be. It's a fantastic place to visit. It's vast, it's interesting, they're great people, and they have a real genuine interest in doing business with UK companies. So we're more than happy to help out. We've got some great friends around us here who are part of that network of assistance as well. So I really do appreciate your time today, and thank you all very much indeed.